All right, welcome to this high-yield explainer on a topic you absolutely have to know inside and out for your anesthesia exams, static lung volumes. We're going to break down all the fundamentals and, more importantly, connect them directly to what you're going to see every single day in the operating room. So let's just kick things off with a simple question, right? How much air can your lungs actually hold? And why does that matter so much when your patient is under anesthesia? Well, the answer is pretty much everything when it comes to managing oxygenation and preventing hypoxia.
Okay, here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the 4 basic volumes. Then we'll see how they combine into capacities. After that, we're doing a deep dive into the one that matters most to us, the functional residual capacity, or FRC. We'll also look at the big problem of airway closure, see how anesthesia just changes everything, and then we'll wrap it all up with the key points you've got to remember.
Right, let's get down to the absolute basics. You've got to nail these down first, because everything else we're going to talk about is built on these 4 fundamental lung volumes. Think of them like Lego bricks. They're individual, they don't overlap, and you can't break them down any further.
First up, you've got tidal volume. Super simple. This is just the amount of air you're moving in and out with each normal, quiet breath. For your average adult, that's about 500 milliliters. It's that gentle, rhythmic breathing you do without even thinking about it.
All right, next up, we have the inspiratory reserve volume. So after you take a normal breath in, this is all that extra air you can forcefully suck in on top of it. You know, that giant deep breath you take before jumping into a pool? That's your IRV. And it's a huge amount. We're talking around 2.5 liters.
So on the flip side of that, you've got the expiratory reserve volume. After a normal, quiet breath out, this is the extra air you can forcefully squeeze out of your lungs. Think about blowing out every single candle on a birthday cake. That's your ERV. And it's typically around 1.5 liters.
And the last of our 4 building blocks is residual volume. Now this is interesting. Even after you've pushed out every last bit of air you possibly can, there's still about 1.5 liters just hanging out in there. And this is absolutely crucial because it's what keeps your tiny air sacs, the alveoli, from completely collapsing. It's like the scaffolding that keeps the whole lung structure propped open.
Okay, so we've got our 4 building blocks: VT, IRV, ERV, and RV. Now it's time to start snapping them together. When we talk about a capacity, all it means is we're adding 2 or more of those volumes together. And these capacities are what give us a real functional picture of what the lungs are doing. This classic spirogram, it's really the best way to see how this all fits together. You can clearly see those gentle waves of tidal volume, right? Then the big swing up for the inspiratory reserve and that big push down for the expiratory reserve. We're about to see how these stack on top of each other to make the larger capacities.
So our first combo is the inspiratory capacity. It's really simple. You just take your normal tidal volume and add that big inspiratory reserve we just talked about. Basically, it's the total amount of air you can possibly breathe in, starting from a normal, relaxed exhale.
Now, listen up, because this next one is probably the most important one for us: functional residual capacity, or FRC. This is the amount of air that's just sitting in your lungs after a normal, quiet breath out. It's your expiratory reserve plus that residual volume combined. You really need to understand FRC because it is, without a doubt, the anesthetist's best friend, and we'll see why in just a second. Then, you've got vital capacity. This is basically the maximum amount of usable air you can move. It's everything except that leftover residual volume. So, if you take the deepest breath you possibly can, and then you blow out as much air as you possibly can, that total amount you moved is your vital capacity.
And finally, the big one, total lung capacity. And yeah, just like it sounds, it's everything. You add up all 4 of those volumes, and what you get is the absolute maximum amount of air your lungs can possibly hold. The whole shebang.
Okay, let's really put FRC under the microscope. Why is this one capacity so unbelievably important in our world? Well, think about this. The second you induce anesthesia and your patient stops breathing, becomes apnoic, the air that's sitting in their FRC is the only oxygen they have to live on. That's it.
I mean, FRC is a real multitasker. First and foremost, it's that critical oxygen reservoir during apnea. But it also acts as a buffer, smoothing out the big swings in oxygen levels between breaths. It physically splints the airways open to stop them from collapsing. That's atelectasis. And it keeps the lungs in that perfect sweet spot of compliance where they're easiest to inflate. It's doing all of that, all at once.
Okay, this slide right here, this is one for the exam notes. For sure, you have to know this, because almost everything we do in anesthesia seems designed to shrink this vital oxygen tank.
Just laying a patient flat reduces it. General anesthesia itself, plus muscle relaxants, causes it to drop even more. And then you've got anything that squashes the lungs from below. Obesity, pregnancy, the gas from laparoscopic surgery. All of those things just crush the FRC.
Okay, so if FRC is our hero, then we have to introduce the villain of the story, closing capacity. This is the lung volume at which the small, floppy airways, especially in the parts of the lung being squashed by gravity, start to collapse shut during exhalation. And when this happens, you've got a serious problem on your hands.
So here's the problem, right? When those little airways snap shut, the air sacs they lead to can't get any fresh oxygenated gas, but they're still getting blood flow from the heart. This creates what we call a V/Q mismatch, a mismatch between ventilation, the V, and perfusion, the Q. And that is a recipe for low oxygen levels, or hypoxemia. And get this is a fact that should really stick with you. Closing capacity gets worse and worse as we get older. In a totally healthy person just sitting upright, the volume at which their airways start to close actually becomes larger than their normal resting lung volume, their FRC, at around age 65. That means with every single normal breath, parts of their lungs are collapsing. Now, just imagine what happens when you lay that person flat and give them an anesthetic.
All right, let's walk into the operating room and see how this all plays out in real time. We're going to put all these concepts together, that shrunken FRC and the looming threat of airway closure, to see what really happens to our patient's lungs under general anesthesia.
So let's just lay it all out. Under anesthesia, FRC is always going to be reduced. No way around it. On top of that, our breathing circuits and tubes add extra dead space, which makes every breath less efficient. So you combine that shrunken FRC with a closing capacity that's getting worse, and you get atelectasis. That atelectasis creates the VQ mismatch, and that impairs gas exchange. This exact sequence is the fundamental respiratory challenge we face with every single patient we look after.
Okay, time to boil this all down to the absolute key takeaways. These are the points you need to have locked and loaded for your exams, and more importantly, for safe practice every day.
Look, if you walk away with just one single thing today, let it be this. Managing and optimizing your patient's FRC is the absolute cornerstone of safe anesthesia. I want you to think of FRC as their oxygen bank account. Every single thing that reduces it is a withdrawal, leaving them with less and less in reserve to handle that critical period of apnea right after induction. Our job is to be good financial advisors, to maximize that account before we ever begin.
The stuff we've covered comes from the core respiratory physiology text you see here. But if you really want to take your understanding to the next level, I highly recommend the articles by Surian and Wills on pre-oxygenation and the one by Kilpatrick and Slinger on lung protective strategies. They are fantastic papers that will really cement what we've talked about today. Thanks so much for joining.